Thought I'd make a little video about octo ports. Um, Again, this is the Michael Baddeley Mark III version of well, I think the files are actually called Hexports, but they have 8 sides, so I've seen them called Hexports and octo ports. But these are greeblies that go in the lower ring of R2D2. And they come in several pieces. One goes in the front of the droid, and one goes in the back. So there's 2 of them, and they have a frame piece, which when this mounts in the droid in this orientation, this is pressed up against the frame. So this interior section is supposed to be blue, or whatever highlight color your droid is. And it's a separate piece, so it's easier to paint blue. And then this piece goes in behind it, and it is supposed to be metallic silver. And then there's this piece, which is one piece, which is 3 cylinders that fit on top of this. And then they go in behind there, and that's your octoport. There are several modifications you can do to the octoports, and I'm going to do a couple and just go over them briefly. Now, if you go to R2D2 reference photo sites, there's all kinds of debate about these gaps. Prevailing theory on the one primary site for R2D2 photos and research information is that these plates were made of metal, and they possibly used black tape in these shapes stuck to the metal. So they weren't actually holes all the way through. But there have been so many Star Wars movies and so many different droids, some fiberglass, some aluminum, modifications throughout the years. There's several different ways that these look. Some look like they have white behind them. Some are like resin castings and not aluminum like the first ones were. So it's another one of those things that's kind of up to you how you want to do it. If you just want to do just the stock 3-piece frame backing and cylinder stack that comes with the Michael Baddeley files, or there's some other files. So one of the things that I first started working on was this, which I thought, oh, this is easy. I'll just, sand and primer and smooth the top. And then these 3 ridges, terraces, whatever you want to call it. But once I started sanding the top, that's fine. But then trying to get these little areas with the sandpaper and get them smooth without gouging into the side of the top piece, it was proving to be kind of a pain in the neck. And again, this is way down on R2, and this is recessed back in the frame. So this is all overkill, but I decided that was a bit hard to sand, and that I had found a mod online that was supposed to be more movie accurate. And the reason I went with it is because this being hard to sand, the modification uses 3 individual pieces. And so it's much easier to prime and sand individual circles, and then they're stacked together. There's a small cylinder that goes in there, and then it glues to the cylinder that protrudes from this that you can't see because I have it covered up. I tend to do that when I want to keep something keep the paint off of it, because if I'm going to be gluing this to this plastic, I'd rather glue plastic to plastic and not have this painted and possibly be too thick for this to go over the top of it, and then you're gluing plastic to paint or paint to paint. So that's why the tape is on here. But there's a little cylinder right there, and then this is actually a 4-piece mod that comes with the 3 circles and then a cylinder that goes in there. So that cylinder goes in there, it glues these together, and then they glue onto this faceplate. So I did that modification so I could get these done easier. And then supposedly this is more accurate compared to the original. I don't know if it's blueprints or the actual item, if somebody got a hold of it, but supposedly this is more accurate than this in size and arrangement. So whether it is or not, I mainly did it because I thought it would be easier to sand. And it was, because not only are you just doing a flat surface, these all print with the good side facing down. And so I have a smooth bed on my Prusa, so they already started out pretty smooth. So I just put a few coats, good coats of primer on it, and then some 220 grit followed by 400 grit, and I got a finish that I'm satisfied is going to look pretty good with the silver paint. Again, they're down low and tucked in. They don't have to be perfect, but I think that they're going to look, they should look pretty good. So that was my first mod. The second mod, like I said, there's different ways to handle these openings. There's a modification of this. In fact, is it the same modification? Actually, it's on printables. I'm not sure. It might be the same one where the discs came from, or separate. I'll find them and put them in the description. But there's a version of this plate where the holes don't go all the way through. They're just indentations. So you would spray your metallic silver on this plate, and then you use a really fine paintbrush, and you take black paint and you fill the recesses in with black. So it looks more like the reference photo that indicates that they actually used tape cut into these shapes stuck on a metal plate. And that comes with 2 different sizes of recesses. So depending on how thick your paint is, you could choose one or the other. And then this mod also comes with individual prints for all of these little tiny pieces. And so that was the first thing I tried. They're all arranged already, so I just added a brim. So they all printed with a brim, so I could take them off of the print bed, and theoretically they're all held together with the brim, and I could just like slot them in behind. Well, the guy mentions that he did tight tolerances so you don't have gaps in between the pieces that go in here and the openings. And so sure enough, it wouldn't just slide in. I would have to spend a bunch of time making these maybe a little bit larger. There's a bit of elephant's foot on the back from the printer, so these might not be quite big enough. And then sanding all the little tiny pieces that printed that go from the back up into this. So I abandoned that idea because that, again, was going to be too much work. And I came up with my own solution. So using Tinkercad, I took this piece and I modified it. The first thing I did was I removed these 2 locator tabs on the back that go into the frame pieces here on either side to hold it in place and give you something to glue it to. And then the second thing I did was cut a hole in the middle. And then I filled all of these holes up. And then I shrank the piece a little bit. And so what that does is it gives me, and then I cut the height so it's fairly thin. And what that gives me is a piece that I can put like this. I can choose to either glue with epoxy, or what I'll probably do, hot glue, which is why I have a hole in the middle. So I can put some hot glue on the outside of each of these edges. And then I can also put like 4 dabs of hot glue in the middle, and that'll keep it from warping, because if you only put it on the edges and this was not hollow, if this was just a flat piece, it might over time warp because it's so thin. But keeping it thin like this with a hole, I can put glue in the 4 corners and glue on the edges, and it should stay in place just fine. Or like I said, this is another piece where I sprayed it in this orientation, so there's no paint on the back. So I could just put some glue on the back and carefully around the edges there and glue it like that. The reason I don't think I'm going to do that is because there is a chance that you're going to get glue in these openings. And even though, again, this is back inside this in the bottom of the droid, nobody's going to get that close to even see. I just decided that this seemed like a really good way to do it. Just hot glue that thing in there, and now you've got black. So it's not quite like the originals because it is recessed, but again, you're not really even going to see that. Now, I have seen people that use speaker cloth. They glue speaker cloth to the back of this piece so that you don't see straight through into the droid, which is the main reason why I wanted to create these backing pieces. Is if you have this in the droid and you have your electronics in there and lights, you could very well get lights going on in here. So if you're looking at the droid, there might be some lights that you see from inside, and I didn't want to do that. So some people use speaker cloth, which would help a bit in getting some of the audio from the speakers out of the interior of the droid, I'm guessing. But I don't think it would be that big of a deal to just cover them up with plastic. So that was my solution. Just wanted to go over one way to do it. Like I said, there are files where you can paint these in, and you can just sand this original one that's 3 pieces. The easiest thing to do would be to sand that, primer it, paint it silver, and don't even worry about these inner circles because, again, they're really hard to see, but I really wanted to get them smooth, and yeah, I was just being a little bit too much of a pain in the neck with trying to get sandpaper around those little tiers. So there we go, just a little video on modification that I did to the octoports. These, I'm going to do one more coat of primer inside. It's to the point where it's good enough where I could paint the blue in there, but I just want to do one more coat of primer and go over it with 400 grit just one more time. There's just a couple areas that I sanded a bit too far down. Just a couple that, again, it's just being picky, but it's fairly easy to put this down and shoot some more primer in there and just go over it one more time. And since we're here using my nice, expensive, still not functional Voron as a table, what I've chosen to do with my doors, there's lots of different ways you can do the doors. on the interior, obviously. Some people paint them white, both on the outside and the inside. Some people do a metallic silver. Some people do gray. What I did was primer and then clear coat, just because I've been primering, to get them ready for paint, which these are now. They're ready for white paint on the top. I decided, oh, why don't I give it a try? So I tried on this door, and you can see, I admit it, there's layer lines in there, but because this is an interior door, I really don't care. When this door is open, you're not really looking at the door. You're looking at the blinky lights inside. So, yeah, I was fine with this door not being perfect. And again, it's the inside of a door. I don't care. Yeah. So that's what this is. That's a magnet. If you print a restraining bolt for R2, it would attach here with either a piece of metal or another magnet in the bottom of the restraining bolt that you can just put on the droid, and it would magnetically stick on, and then you could pull it off. I'm not sure if I'm going to print a restraining bolt or not, but that was a hole made for a magnet, and I have the magnets, so I just put 2-part epoxy in the hole, pushed it in there, spray painted over the top of it, and then, yeah, got the door, like I said, where it's not perfect, but it's the inside of a door. I don't even know if you'd expect that to be perfect, but got it to where I was happy with it, and now it's ready for white paint. And so are my bread pan doors. These are the second iteration for me. The first ones I did when I had my TiVo Tornado 300 millimeter by 300 millimeter bed. I printed them in one piece at an angle across the bed. Well, I don't have that printer anymore, and the Voron is 500 by 500 millimeters, but it's not running yet. So when I didn't like my one-piece doors because they were a little bit warped in the middle, and I used a heat gun, and I completely messed one up because now it's warping in this direction as well. I reprinted them, and I had to do it in 2 parts. So I took the one-piece door just in Prusa slicer and sliced it in half, and then printed 2 halves, and then glued them together in the middle. I used 2-part epoxy, and I also used a soldering iron to melt, kind of like stitches, melt it together front and back. You can see, I think, a little bit there. So I did not, again, I didn't try to get it 100% perfect, but I put some time in it trying to get it fairly well disguised that it's 2 pieces on the back where it didn't really matter. And then I spent more time on the front. And I know it's still primer, so it's kind of hard to see, but it turned out pretty darn well. So these are also the same thing with the primer and clear coat on the back. And then I need to paint white on the front. And then after I paint white on the front, the thin bit up there, because it's supposed to look kind of like 2 skins, like the thin outer metal skin, and then the thicker inner frame. So I want to paint just this top, well, whatever, outer lip. I want to paint that white. So after I paint the front white, I think I might just get a white paint pen, and so I'll mask off these lips and then just use a white paint pen to get the edge white. Or the other thing I was thinking of doing is holding it like this when I go to paint it white, mask off the rest of the door, spray white on the edges, and then grab it like that, flip it, spray white on the edges, go like this, lay it down, and then paint white over the top, and that way I get the top and the back all painted white at the same time. But the whole holding it while I'm painting it and then having to grab it and flip it and paint it, I'm not completely sold on that. I might try it with the other door first and see if it works with this door. Hold it there, spray around there. Hold it there, spray it around there, masking the entire interior off. And if that works on the small door, then maybe I'll do it on the big door. And if it doesn't work on the small door, I can reprint the small door, because that does fit on the print bed and I can do it in one piece. The reason this is not as nice as the bread pan doors is because this came off the TiVo Tornado, and the print quality, as I was getting near finished with printing parts, was starting to degrade, because basically it needed to be gone through and readjusted, because I had so many hours on it printing all of the large pieces for R2D2 that it just kind of, they're fairly, well, they're cheap printers, and they get out of tolerance after a while. So that's why this one, I didn't want to spend enormous amounts of time trying to get the inside perfect, but I did do my best on the outside. So if I mess that up, then it's no big deal. So this has been kind of, with the clear coat, I did it on this piece first before I did the bread pan doors, to make sure that I liked the finish and thought, oh yeah, I can live with that, that's fine. So there we go. Was just going to talk about octo ports, but it's turned into octo ports and doors. Obviously, because I'm working on both. The other things I have left for the body, other main thing, are these, which have just tons of fun trying to get in and sand all these small areas. I have one in the garage that I did sand and then put several coats of primer on, that I need to start sanding that primer down and see what I got. So this one is pretty much untouched, just off the printer. I did sand the edges all the way around to get it to fit better into R2 without like having to force it in. But other than that, because this goes in the very, very back center of R2D2, this is kind of, back burner, whereas the other one goes right in the front. These pieces here that I have two of, they are the pieces that go right here. So this main block gets painted silver. These little washers get painted blue. These four triangular type pieces get painted blue. Those are separate files that you print, so that you can spray this whole thing and then you can just glue in the blue parts instead of trying to mask that off and paint that area blue. The same thing with these holes in the back. There's a single print that has these four pieces on it, held together with a cross structure, so that you just paint that piece blue and then you put it in there and glue it in place. So again, you can paint this silver, and then the blue details are all separate pieces. Again, it's a longer video than I thought, but these, I haven't looked at the Patreon files for Michael Baddeley in a couple years. I've started going on to the Facebook page and doing more research now that I'm getting into more of these printed parts, but I haven't actually logged on to the Patreon files. This piece used to be only in the version 2 R2D2 files. So I don't know if he's changed that and put these into the Mark III. But there were several questions back when I was first building this. People were saying, well, where is this thing at? Because for whatever reason, Michael didn't put these little washers into the Mark III folder with the power couplers. So you had to go into the version 2 Droid power coupler files to get this washer piece. So, and I believe those are located in the body files, and then Greebly files, and then power coupler. So you won't find, well, you didn't used to find these in the power coupler file for the Mark III droid, but you can pull them out of the version 2 droid, and they are the same. It is the same part. It fits. You don't have to modify it or anything. It's just not in the Mark III files. But again, I haven't been in the files for a couple years, so he might have put it in there. But just in case you downloaded your files a while ago and you notice that you don't have those blue pieces, I think I've actually seen people's droids where they just have that silver because they weren't even aware that the blue piece goes there, because it wasn't in the files with this and the triangle pieces and the back pieces, so they didn't even know that that was supposed to go there. So just a heads up on that if you're printing and it's still the case where you don't have that washer piece in your files. It should be in the version 2 droid body / Greeblies / power coupler file. So I think that's about it that I'm currently working on. The last piece, since this video's already long enough, doesn't matter if I add a couple more minutes. This is the fourth door. This is the charge bay door. The one I had was also printed on the TiVo Tornado, and it was horrible quality. Well, is horrible quality. I still have it in my bucket of parts that need to be finished. But it was just in really bad shape. It needs a lot of sanding and filling. So I just went ahead and I actually printed this one upright with supports down here. So that's, bottom of that is jagged, but that's no big deal to put some filler in there where that is raised up. So yeah, this one, because I printed it in 0.2 quality, it's really nice. It's not going to take that much work at all. Like I said, just put some filler in there to fix that, and not much sanding. It comes with a hole for a little magnet, because in the Mark III design, this isn't made to be remote controlled. It's made to be like manually opened. So you put a little magnet in there and another one in the body to keep it closed. I think Tim Hebel has a servo mount that you can print and glue inside the droid to be able to open this with your automation with a servo. So I've downloaded that. I haven't printed it out, that servo block. And holding this piece up to the droid, it almost seems like it's not long enough. In this direction, it seems like maybe it should be a bit longer. And I went on to the Facebook page and looked it up, and I saw several people were saying it was quite a bit too short on theirs, and other people said it fit fine. And so yeah, I don't know what's going on with that file, but I might end up reprinting this, and all I would do is just again bring it into the slicer, put it like this with supports, and I'd probably just increase the X dimension. So it'd be longer this way by a couple millimeters. But I won't really know that until I get the hinges on, whether this needs to be reprinted or not, which, again, let's just keep talking here. I've got hinges. I've got, I printed the hinge blocks back in 2020 out of PETG, and I also printed the hinges themselves, but I think I mentioned in another video, I reprinted these recently. These are the Jason Charlton modified hinges. They have a hole, probably can't see it because they're in a bag, but they have a hole right there that he added right through the hinge. So you can use just a regular metal rod attached to your servo to open and close them, instead of the design that Michael Baddeley had, where you have a piece of TPU and there's a slot in these hinge pieces where you cram the TPU into that slot, and the TPU piece acts as the opening device that's connected here and to the servo. So Jason Charlton just put a little hole in here, so you can use just a standard metal rod to actuate it. And he also changed the geometry of the hinge slightly, because several people were having issues where their doors wouldn't close quite all the way. And so Jason's got a really nice video on how he discovered what his issue was on his droid. Again, your droid may be different, but his Mark III droid had the problem where his doors weren't closing all the way, and he figured out what the issue was and redesigned these hinges. So I printed all new hinges pieces for that, and like I said, I've got all the blocks here. They were still attached to a brim, so I've got them all shaved down where they're smooth. I don't know that I have the proper screws to attach them to the body yet, and I'm not sure if I'm going to paint them or not. I think Michael Baddeley, I found a post where he just, I think, uses a paint pen on the side that's barely visible on the droid when you attach them. There's just a sliver that's visible. I think he just covers that with a white paint pen, so I might just spray that one side white that sticks out. I might spray the whole thing. So I haven't decided yet, but the main thing is to get my doors painted. So doing all this prep work has been my main priority so far. So now I'm over a half an hour on this video. That was supposed to be a quick video. Standard for me. I think that's about all I can talk about that I've been working on, because yeah, that's pretty much what I've been working on. So hope this maybe helps somebody, and that's it for this video.